At the atomic level, matter is an outlier. A single atom is 99.9999% empty space, with only 0.0001% defined as a solid nucleus. This vast interior is not a void. It is a field of quantum information and probability, with a density far exceeding the matter it contains. Default human perception remains entirely blind to this 99.9999% of reality, failing to register the energetic data that constitutes the bulk of the universe. Our senses evolved to interact exclusively with the tiny fraction of physical matter, filtering out the quantum field to simplify our experience. Human reality is essentially a restricted dataset, ignoring the majority of universal information to maintain a stable, material focus. The ego functions as the primary biological filter for this dataset, operating as a neurological gatekeeper rather than a psychological concept. This filter serves a strict evolutionary purpose. It prioritizes immediate physical threats to ensure the organism stays alive in the material plane. This mechanism locks perception into a three-dimensional grid, functioning like a virtual reality headset that limits the wearer's field of view to ensure survival. Overriding this neurological filter constitutes the mechanical process of awakening. Bypassing this gatekeeper requires a measurable, systemic upgrade to the central nervous system's processing capacity. When the ego dominates perception, the brain operates at the high beta frequency. This visualization shows high beta brainwaves. Notice the jagged, asynchronous pattern, indicating neural networks firing in a state of rapid chaos. This electrical chaos forces the limbic system into a state of constant alarm. The alarm triggers a systemic flood of cortisol and adrenaline throughout the body's pathways. These chemicals disrupt the smooth operating rhythms of peripheral organs, causing profound autonomic dysregulation. This fight-or-flight response is an adaptation meant for short-term physical threats, like escaping a predator. Modern humans now trigger this massive chemical cascade through abstract thought alone, such as ruminating on the past or obsessing over the future. Constant identification with this egoic narrative traps the nervous system in a perpetual, toxic state of survival. Living in a chronic high beta state leads to epigenetic degradation, a physical consequence of sustained stress. Continuous exposure to stress hormones signals the body to downregulate gene expression, essentially turning off cellular repair mechanisms to save energy for defense. This genetic shift moves the body towards systemic breakdown and chronic disease. The body's chemistry cannot differentiate between a literal physical predator and an imagined stressful scenario. It reacts with the same destructive force in both cases. When left running indefinitely, the survival mechanism of the ego becomes the primary cause of biological destruction. Meditation functions as a deliberate, mechanical downregulation of neural oscillation. This graph shows the shift that occurs when a subject withdraws attention from the external world. The jagged high beta waves smooth out into slower, synchronized alpha waves. In this state, the brain transitions from analytical, external processing to a more internal, imaginative mode. Sustained meditation slows the frequency further, lengthening the waves into the theta range. Theta brainwaves act as the neurological bridge between the conscious analytical mind and the autonomic subconscious. Entering theta mechanically suspends the brain's default habit of using past trauma to predict future threats. Because the brain's analytical circuits are now offline, it stops retrieving the memory narratives that sustain the personality. This halts the processing of localized autobiographical data. Slowing these oscillations disables the survival filter, stopping the chronic stress cascade at its neurological source. We can measure the order of the autonomic nervous system through heart rate variability, or HRV. On the left, we see the spiky, erratic HRV pattern produced by a brain locked in survival mode. On the right, the HRV arc produced in the theta state is a smooth, rhythmic sine wave. This coherent heart rhythm acts as an amplifier, sending an all-clear signal back to the brain. This heart-brain coherence is the strict, foundational biological requirement for the human nervous system to initiate systemic cellular repair. When coherence reaches its climax, the brain can experience a massive spike into high-frequency gamma waves. On clinical imaging, this spike appears as a synchronized snowstorm of electrical activity, flooding the entire cortex with light. This level of electrical density is so high that classical pathology models often mistake it for a seizure. While it looks like a seizure to an observer, the subject experiences profound lucidity and bliss. This event marks the nervous system successfully reconnecting to the 99.9999% informational field. In the gamma state, the brain operates at its peak mathematical density, shifting from survival to neurological flourishing. When the brain sustains gamma synchronization, it triggers an immediate chemical output. The body begins the endogenous production of morphine-like opioids, generated entirely from within. This is followed by the release of neurogenic factors, antiviral chemicals, and anti-carcinogenic agents flooding into the bloodstream. These healing chemicals are entirely absent from the bloodstream while the body is in survival mode. The presence of these compounds represents an objective physical shift into a self-regulating pharmacy. Systems theory suggests you cannot upgrade a biological system from within its localized parameters. It is biologically impossible to heal the body's stress using the same analytical thought patterns that created it. Epigenetic healing requires stepping outside the material framework to access raw informational data. This frequency shift results in the unbinding and complete rewriting of DNA bonds to express new, healthy proteins. This new genetic expression moves the human machine out of chronic defense and into a sustained state of growth. By mechanically removing the survival filter, the organism regains access to the total informational field, a biological event traditionally described as spiritual awakening.